Ladies, gentlemen, and others, today on the podcast, I have someone who I consider a dear friend, but we didn't start out like that. We started with a blogger agency relationship. And when I met the founder of this PR firm, I was just very, very happy because she's one of the most warm people you'll meet in this space. Along with me here today, I have the founder, very dynamic entrepreneur, Komal Lath, who is the founder and CEO of Tute PR. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you, Aanam. This is such a fun setup.
Thank you.
And great to see from content creator on the gram to content creator across different mediums.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to have you on board because, I get called OG content creator very often, which is, of course, a compliment. And I think you're OG PR person in this space. You've been around for over 12 years as an entrepreneur, as the founder of Tute.
Yeah, it's going to be 13 now, the same birthday month as yours. And many, many decades before that. So, complete 21 years now in this space.
Wow. How has this journey been and what made you get into PR?
A lot of rejections. So, it was a simple summer job which you're looking for when you're like 17 and you write to a bunch of places. So, I'd written to event companies and many advertising agencies, PR agencies, whatever was in the 5-kilometer radius. That was the real clincher. And then I think a lot of event agencies just rejected it. They had their own things. You got to look in a particular way. You got to talk in a particular way. And then there was this lovely PR agency which said, come on board. It started as a 2-month internship, became a 2.5-year stint with some fantastic people. And it's no looking back from there.
So 20 years ago, was PR the same as it was today? Or rather, what did you think of PR at that time? I want to know because 20 years ago, it's evolved so much.
Yeah. It's also difficult yet explaining to your parents what do you do, right? Because you're not writing for a paper or a medium. You're also not on the brand side. So it's a bit of a misnomer to explain it to them, but that's the fun part. No, PR has evolved so much like all our professions have, right? What we see in the fax days, don't judge me by the age now. So from those days to seeing everything going the BlackBerry phase and now completely everything WhatsApp to WhatsApp notes. Voice notes are saving the day, right? So it's been a journey of where it is. But I think back in the day, it was good old traditional. You had your print, you had your TV, a bit of the internet. It was just catching up. Now it's completely topsy-turvied into an entire new business, each one having their influencer specialist agencies. There are analytic agencies and you name it. There's a whole plethora of different things happening.
Around 15 years ago would also be a good timestamp to put around when Samantha Jones, Kim Cattrall, put PR on like the mainstream map with Sex and the City, right? Because she made the job look really cool. And I'm going to say that she made the job look a lot easier than I'm sure it is.
It is. And thanks to her, at least the word PR professional got like a global stamp. You're absolutely right. Onto that content creation, right? We almost started the same time when we started our companies together. And you were just fledging in to understand how do you make that happen, right? We've seen that evolution. When I looked at shows like Emily in Paris right now, I had an extreme urge to write to them, if only client approvals were so easy. If only everybody just thought an idea, the snap and could WhatsApp, and then you have the best of luxury brands saying yes to you. I'd love to meet such clients. If you do, we'll share it.
And on the flip side of that, how quickly she goes viral and her followers go up. Hello, as a creator, I was like, what is she doing? What app is she on? Because it's definitely not any of the ones I'm on.
You bet. So it's good to have the professions out there. But the reality is a bit different than what we see, like always is. But it's been a lovely journey.
Has there been, is there one significant change that comes to mind that happened then and doesn't happen now or vice versa?
I think loyalty. It was very, very inherent to us, whether it's client side or whether you're working for a company like your colleagues. I think the loyalty factor, the transparency factor, if we didn't like something, we'd voice it and it would get close there. There was no quiet quitting. There was no built up. There was nobody doing those back deals and side deals. Life was good. We enjoyed our work. We worked all very, very hard. We were done and we would party later without any qualms. I think that sort of a thing is very different now. You have to engineer a lot of things. You're walking on eggshells every day. And I'm sure you face it too, right? You have a team now, Aanam.
Yeah.
It's very, very different.
Could it also be because there are so many more agencies and so you're not just competing for clients, you're also competing for the best resources and talent?
I've made my peace with it. So there was a time when resources would leave us and join other companies, which they yet do. And I'd be like, I trained them, I took care of them, I took care of their education in many places, families, and now they don't seem to do. I think I needed to make that switch to me that they are wise enough to make their choices. And you got to do best what you got to do and send out good talent in the world. So be the best training school. And that's what we are now.
I don't know if enough people know this about you. You are one of the most cheerleader-ish people ever. You have never missed a moment where you haven't reached out to me. Today I know you for like, let's say 10 years, 11 years. But even when I just met you like a decade ago, I want to say we should put an exact, like, I'm sure that that's a quality that also helps you with work, right? Like, what would you say is something that a PR entrepreneur today absolutely needs to be able to do?
Very interesting question, Aanam. We should respond and not react. I've been in a phase where we all have reacted with immediate response, like, tuck, 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 this happened, do this. And then you just ponder back and say, now, when I start responding instead of reacting, I'm far more measured. I think more peace at things. And if your mind's at that Zen stage, I think everything good happens because you're channeling the right energy. And then it takes its course, because if it is not supposed to happen, like Brad Pitt says, it's not going to happen. Why worry about that? Think about the possibilities of the happening and then go with that. You're just going to be less disappointed.
So true. Is there something that you shouldn't do in the PR space today? Like the opposite of what I asked you earlier, basically.
I think be transparent with people you work with, whether it's the economy of creators or the media or your clients. You speak one lie, it will build up. And today, honestly, everything is out on social media. It's a small world. Just be transparent and be absolutely at it what you want to do. I think it's just there. And be timely. I think it's a universal rule. Close loops, like we say, right? Like if it's a no, no is a response. Yes is a response. Silence is not.
Yeah.
So I think what my pet peeve, if you're asking me, is the silence. Like close loops.
Yeah. Give me an example of a really like shitty breaking of trust in the PR entrepreneur with either brand side or media influencer side, because you guys do work with a lot of influencers, but you work with more media.
No, we work with both depending on what the mandates are. But yeah, we've seen the evolution of different channels and mediums, and I'm a big believer. We were one of the first ones to start the whole influencer program, I think 10 years back, when it was very, very nascent. So it's been a very, very interesting journey to see how it's evolved and what are the possibilities of it being. But yeah, I mean, we've all got stories, right? So I think a couple of interesting ones was that in trust, when you go pitch in with a partner agency, I remember asking this agency for some assistance, saying, hey, you know what, I don't have a Delhi office, but we're looking into pitch in with this client. What's the intel like? What's the on-ground thing like? Do people come for this kind of an event? Is it wise to commit to this? So what's the client? I can totally help you. And I gave it, got the intel, only to know they landed the project. They went behind my back and pitched the same brand and got it. I'm like, okay, that's a trust too much, but lesson learned that you keep your relationships absolutely one-on-one, no matter what.
Can you say no easy? Does that come easily to you?
It's taken a while. It's okay. Your mental health also matters, but don't use that as a victim card to be able to, I'm not coming to work today because this happened. My mental health is not okay. 1 day, 2 day, month, 2 month, and then you start taking advantage. So you have these little anomalies that keep happening. I think I'm just navigating my way, learning every day on how to do it, but taking on only that much that I want to handle. So for us, growth is not handling 300 brands, is handling 30 brands beautifully, where we all sleep and have great holiday photos. I think that's a celebration more than, hey, this is my turnover and this is, of course that matters. But peace of mind, what's the point earning when you can't spend it? And be at peace and go and meet your mom and hug her. What are you going to do that money for?
When there is a brand that's looking out for an agency to manage their rep, there are multiple agencies that are called in for pitches. You come in with tentative plans, you come in with numbers, you come in with suggestions. And I think from the way I've seen it, agencies lay out a plan, but don't get into details, obviously, because they could just hire someone else and have someone else do your ideas. But in situations like that, where you need to assert yourself, and having said that, not lay everything out on the table. I'm sure there are clients who want to dig into more and understand more, some for inquisitiveness and just general curiosity, while for others it may be more strategic. And I know, because again, I know you beyond just the workspace. We've had meals together, we've hung out together. So I just want to kind of set some context as to how I know her already, a decade, right? You're not very political in the way you network, which works against people like you and I. I'm going to say it for us.
Absolutely.
We're not good at that. We're good at networking. I feel like we can network if the energy is organic there. I feel like people like us can network if there is a genuine vibe, connection, something to talk about. But when somebody comes and says, this person is so and so, try and make a connection there, I'm like, shit, you shouldn't have said that to me, because now in my head, I have my walls up. For me, I have the privilege of shutting down when I can. But if you're pitching to someone like that and you're the founder of this agency, how do you maneuver a situation where what you know is good for business versus in your head, you're like, yaar, iske saath kaam nahi karna hai.
That happens so often. You're right. It's a lot of energy exchange. Sometimes you enter a room and you get hostile energy. Have you ever felt that? You can't pinpoint it, but it's there. And that person or that team is not comfortable with you. So I don't have that privilege yet of putting my guard up and saying, okay, no.
But that's because your business model is different from mine. You're still very high up there when people know you in your agency. What I mean is your business structure requires you
people.
to...
I have to get the work, or for that matter, it's a great business or a brand, but maybe the people. But people make it a brand, right? I think a lot gets sorted when you have a team talking for you. Because, you have different energies mixing in. But if we know that person's not going to be the one that's really going to help you grow or your business grow, it's okay to say no to it. And that's fine, because in the longer run, toxic relationships are bigger killers of your mind, businesses, people quitting, etc., than 3 small happy businesses are. So I think that's a conscious call one will take. And it's very individual. Like, you cannot say that this mold fits in the other. People evolve. We all evolve. What we were to where we are now, I remember I was a very different person 10 years back, but I was hungry, ambitious, did not care maybe on the emotional part that much as I did about the numbers. But you transcend into different things. And now I feel that if I'd lend my 2 pieces of advice and say, don't worry, you can scout all along. When you feel, we'll have a chat. Instead of just saying, no, it won't work for us. I've just taken a different route of communicating the same thing, trying to get more politically correct, but nah, that's not our DNA.
Have you ever had a situation where someone you were trying to work with gave you that hostile energy, looked around the market, and then came back?
You know the brands that I've done. We've discussed them.
But they've come back to you?
No, they've come back. A lot of them have come back, and in good faith. Like, I'm not one of those who'll come back. I'll be like, hey, I told you so. This I told you so is just such a put off. You can't do that. The person's got their own learnings and journeys to go through. You don't know what that person's journey is. I remember you putting out stuff on social, right? When you said that don't judge a person because you don't know what's behind the camera. That person could have had just an encounter before or something before. So I'm taking the good sword in there and saying, don't worry. Okay, if you need a piece of advice, come to us. But that's how it is.
Okay, so if you had to break down what a PR agency does for like the laywoman out there rather, can you break it down for us? Just for someone who's not from the industry, what does a PR agency do for a brand?
Wow, that's an interesting, lots of questions rolled into one, right? Okay, so a simple one-line answer will be, we storytell or we make them fall in love with brands we represent. But if I have to break it down, what a day in the life for us is, you'd be researching, a lot of reading, a lot of writing. You'd be working on building the reputation for a brand using paid, owned, and earned mediums. Very simple. So you got to have a pulse on pop culture. You got to have a pulse on the sector that you will be working on. And you have to fall in love with reading and writing. That's it. The rest, all the skill can be taught. The will has to be 100%.
And if you had to break down the 3 types of media you just mentioned, paid,
owned and earned.
Owned and earned. Can you define them for our listeners as well?
So we call them poems for memory's sake, right? Paid, owned, earned media services. Just very simple to remember. Paid would be anything that you put a transaction to. So it could mean paying a content creator, paying a media, putting out an ad, advertorial. Those would fall under the paid mediums. Owned would be your own assets, your own website, the t-shirts that you wear to work maybe, your own app, your social media, those would fall under the owned medium. And earned is where you garner the comments, the shares, the editorials, the organic gifting shout outs, all of those would fall under the earned medium. So the combination of these three, with earned being 80%, would fall under the PR person's bracket. When you do the owned part more, you would be part of the brand aspect. And if you're in the paid aspect, you'll be largely a media company or a influencer agency. So that simplifies it for all.
So you deal with media, you deal with influencers, you deal with HNIs across categories. What's your favorite and least favorite category to deal with?
In terms of the kind of brands we deal with?
No, in terms of the kind of media. And relationship building.
Right.
Like, are journalists easier to deal with than influencers?
I think my favorite medium is the owned medium, where we do a lot of LinkedIn writing. It's easy because you don't have to deal with the person. You're dealing with a machine who listens to you. So that's going to be my top favorite.
You found a trick answer out of this.
That's my most favorite category.
What's your second most favorite?
I think content creators and media both would be.
No. I'm not accepting this answer. You need to rank them one by one. Like, and nobody gets on a tag.
I don't know how to
Listen,
answer.
I'm not
You can have
offended.
favorite children, right? Like if you had nibbles and you had one more, would you be able to pick? Can
Your
you pick
categories of media are not your children, Komal. This is not an acceptable answer. You gotta. I'm not, on behalf of all content creators you have worked with, not offended if journalists are easier to deal with. You can say.
No. I think it's a relationship game.
Huh.
So I'm comfortable. If I have to personally deal, I will pick up the phone with equal alacrity on both. But if my teams have to deal, it's their own relationships to take. But I think in today's time, it's easier dealing with media than content creators. I don't remember any of the established ones like yourselves, etc., telling us that at any point. It should be a conversation. So to answer your question very politically correctly, it would be the media to deal with is slightly easier or better. It's easier that they want to do a story. It's a yes and no. In content creators, we don't know what the outcome is, and fairly so, because that's how the medium is.
It's more dynamic. But could it also be, and this is just me analyzing what you're saying, obviously coming from the point of view of a content creator, could it also be because with media, you're not dealing with marketing / sales. You're dealing with editorial, which means they have the discretion to say, hey, we'll integrate you somewhere. Hey, it won't be an exclusive story about your client, but we will include them. Whereas with content creators, because a lot of it is short form, which is, I think, what's the biggest, it's taking up a huge chunk of the kind of content that most creators are doing. If it's a short form piece of content, it basically becomes dedicated to your brand, your client. And then that takes away from the business model of a transaction and a potential monetizing opportunity. Like, I have a lot of agencies that reach out to me and say, hey, can you do an exclusive story shout out? And very transparently speaking, I'll say, no, I'm going to see and try if I like the product. And if I like it, then I'm either going to do an exclusive or I'm going to feature it where I think it fits. But I don't want to commit to anything before trying it out. Whereas with a magazine, because they do have set number of pages to fill, they have more, and they're much more organized, obviously, as a medium, right?
So I'm very intrigued by the space of content creators because, of course, we started investing in it way back then.
You were one of the first movers into that space as an agency.
I think they're more effective. So if you ask me what's a more effective category today between media and content creators, if you have to pick one. Today, content creators, you can perhaps see the numbers to know what the outcome of that content piece has been, right? So from an effective point of view, it's audio-visual as opposed to just print or just digital. So it may reach out to a larger number of people who are engaging with that content. But there's no favorite. I think it's a combination of all that actually works for a brand. It's never a one-way street. It's like doing a movie promotion, right? You have to do the trailer, you have to do the post, you have to do the pre. Can't say just because of the actor one, he also has to do the promotions.
Correct. By that logic, would you find it most easy to work with the digital part of a magazine because all of the data would be trackable? Because I know, obviously, over the last decade, we've gone from magazines focusing as much on print as to also putting digital forward so strongly. And not just strongly, I also feel like subscriptions have gone down. Print being kind of on a decline has been a massive conversation in media globally. There are magazines that have gone from having monthly, bi-monthly issues to becoming quarterly or becoming once every 2 months. And I'm talking about mainstream magazines and publications, right? So do you then think that the direction of magazines focusing on their digital, verticals, the easiest to work with in that sense? Because A, they must be cheaper than print for sure, because the prestige factor of being in print
Yeah,
is, kind of taken away there. And it's also trackable because then there's data to, track where you're getting the traffic on your brand's website from, and it's still got that new age buzz of being on
absolutely.
socials.
So there's a lot of audio visual there one can play around with. Interesting formats. Podcast is one of the formats a lot of the publications are starting with and are delving into it, doing their own videos. Events, a lot of the publications today depend on events to be able to sort of bring out their brand message, right? So beauty awards to business awards, all of those are by publications which hold a certain esteem. So I think a combination of all this is what PR puts together, which awards to gun for, what are the reputation one should look at, what LinkedIn pieces of writing that are needed to be able to create a certain image, which content creators to partner with, which journalists to have as advocates over a period of time, because it's beautiful moving parts coming together as one. And I think that's what the job role of a content creator plus PR plus teams get together, you know? So this year, interestingly, we launched something, Anam. It's the first global copyright of putting together plans for integrated agencies to make sense of so many moving parts. And we've been sharing this across with B schools and things, and we're one of the first ones to do it, to only realize how well accepted a simple format or table can be. So it's putting together those very little things that make life easy. And that's going to be benefiting all, not only content creators, not only media, but the world is moving to generative AI and a whole different space there with Bard and Chat GPT. I'm sure you're hearing about this and using all of these tools. So the world is moving towards very skilled people. I think that's where the content creators, that's where the PR teams lie. That's where the game lies.
If you had to give a suggestion to any brand founders listening slash watching, and they wanted to get an agency on board to manage their reputation online, offline with the media, what are the three filters you would ask for them to have on the kind of on to watch out for rather when their agency is pitching to them? What does Toot do differently, and what are the filters you would have them keep an eye out for?
Great question, especially because we've all built businesses from 0 to 10 and 10 to 100, maybe. Number one, it's a patient game. If you had to throw money and get advertorials out, you can do that. But is that reputation? That's for you to answer. Second, keep one focused goal. Don't have too many ands. The minute you have ands, it doesn't show clarity of thought on your end. Clarity of thought is when you're chasing one goal and that permeates into your organization and everybody that you work with. So, what's your SOCO, single objective communication, whatever. That is your key singular goal. And third, respect. When you respect and hire experts, don't tell them what to do. You've engaged in an expert for expertise. If you knew your job, you wouldn't need us.
If you knew your job, you wouldn't need us. Especially, I want to say that stands true for creators as well, because so many times I will have brands who will come to me and say, we want this, this, this. And before we can say, okay, so let's do ABC, they'll be like, we want this is this by doing this is this. And I'm like, अब तुमने decide कर ही लिया है तो हम क्या करें
Yeah,
तुम्हारे
and
लिए?
we fall into that trap, you know. Sometimes, like when my girls are asked to make these calls to, we've done that to you, so I know that, or to, for people saying this color of the outfit, this, because the brand is this. You can give certain options saying, hey, this is the line of thought, and they respect it. But the minute you start micromanaging, this is like micromanagement, right? Telling every detail what to do, then just hire somebody in house and get them to do what you
Get a
want.
model. I had this client literally 2 days ago where we were having this back and forth on WhatsApp. And again, my team's on it, but because I'm like, I know these guys, I would much rather be
Pick
part
up
of
the
it
phone.
myself. And they're like, we want this, this, this. And I've sent it. But can we make it look more organic? I'm like, तुम्हारा end to end एड लाइंस है, हाँ, तुम्हारा हैशटैग 5 हैशटैग स्क्रीन पे है, हैंडल्स है, ये ऑर्गेनिक कहाँ से लगने वाला है? इट्स नॉट. इफ यू वांट समथिंग टू लुक ऑर्गेनिक, let the media managers, let the content creators construct the flow of the content. We can tell you what will work if you let us tell you what
Yeah.
will work. If you give me a script or you tell me, oh, you're saying this is fine, but now this needs to be done, this needs to be 50 hashtags. How is it going to look organic, guys? Nothing you do.
Yeah, we'll do it. But is it going to work for goal one? It's definitely not going to, because dictating anybody their expertise, I think, is one of the biggest drawbacks of everybody comes with the fact that you said, "No, I know it all."
There's a very new thing going around, and I've heard this from a lot of others. I've experienced it only recently, where they're like, oh, but so and so blogger is doing it. And I'm sure you must have got the agency version of this. So when I heard this for the first time recently, I said to my manager, bol do usse kara dene ke liye. I'm out.
Yeah.
And then I backed out of the campaign, and then I was reached out to directly by the brand saying, hey, we wanted you. What happened? And I was like, well, your agency said this to me. Then I'm like, I'm going to say it, because if you're going to force me into that situation, then I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
happy to call a spade a
Don't
spade.
sell yourself short. That's what I think is one of my key learnings. We say yes very easily because of relationships.
Mm.
We'll do that for a relationship, but when you know that's crossing a line, not because of the relationship that you share with the person, but because of external factors, don't sell yourself short. I know it's come, we keep doing it, but just don't. I think like to stand in your own ground is such a high, is such a feel good. Like I can see like you get into that, I know what you're saying, because that's exactly how it should be. You can have 100 comparisons about I'm going to this place because they're offering me so much, or this agency is doing this, but your deliverables are less. I'm like, there are enough recipes, but you're getting a chef to cook it and you're not getting your cook to do it. So it's your decision. Go have that. You want a Taj, then don't compare it to the roadside hawker, no? There will be a hawker, I will be a Taj. And I'm not going to lower my standards for that.
I love this metaphor. The foodie in me is very satisfied with this metaphor. So we play this fun game on the podcast. It's called Associate This. And I want to throw
Damn.
words at you.
This is going completely Karan Johar on me.
I love it. See, Coffee with Karan पे I don't know अगर मुझे मौका मिलेगा तो मैं करण ही बन जाती हूँ and I throw these words at people. The key is I'm going to throw words at you and tell me what comes to your mind.
Damn. Go for
I don't
it.
have your words, so I'm going to use my own. So this conversation happens with influencers very often, and I actually had a conversation with a food creator just last week who said that she has actually lost out on campaigns because she doesn't have the verification blue tick. Is that something that agencies truly, genuinely care about?
No, that's a myth. That doesn't happen like that. Honestly, if you're well invested with the brand and the brand trusts you, so the current clientele at Tute at least is a trustworthy one, I must say, they will rely on your expertise to be able to do it. They'll have their own wish list and categories, but it's for you to fight for it and say, hey, we genuinely believe the content is here to stay. So no, that's a myth. At least with most agencies, this will be a myth. We don't prefer a blue tick. I think after what Elon has done, I think everything is out for everyone to know.
What are some other myths you've heard about, like the creator economy or about the PR landscape? Are there any other myths that you can bust for us?
Not immediately, but I know there are a lot of these, sideline conversations that happen that, Ari, I know this one, they will do it, yaar, mera relationship hai. I think that needs to be put a little bit more structured. No matter how well do you know, there's a certain boundary of saying yes and no and a way to ask. I think that relationship across sacrosanct should never be taken for granted. We've all had those instances. You make uncomfortable calls and say it, but be transparent about it and then get your work done and honor your statement after whatever you have to do. I think a lot of myth is also on the charging bit. I think, don't play this dual rates game, etc. It's all out there for the open. So for creators especially, keep it transparent. It's only going to help you get more business.
Yeah.
If you're going to have this, I know this one, this rate for you, this rate for them, it's a small world. The client is going to move to the agency will move to client. It's going to be one happy family. Keep it happy. We don't represent content creators unless you're really close to me. I will do whatever it takes. But doesn't make any difference. Keep it transparent. Keep it business-like. The more you're structured, the more it's easier for us to associate because we know from start to end it's taken care of.
Yeah.
And there's no better joy than working with somebody who gets it, whether it's your own team or anybody, right?
True. Thanks for coming on, for being so candid, for being slightly politically incorrect. I appreciate
Slightly?
the honesty. No, slightly. I thought you were
This one have been my most fun chats I've had in a long, long time and laughed so much, right?
I'm so
thank you.
grateful. Thank you. Thank you for doing this. I hope that this episode has helped anyone from outside of the media space and industry understand a little bit more on how PR works, the influencer world works, just media at large. And maybe we'll do a round 2 with you at some point when we have enough questions, and hopefully we have loads of those.
We'll have lots of stories for sure. And for everybody, guys, this is verified.
Thank you, Komal,
Yay!
for coming on the pod.